Okay, I think we can get started now. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 68th Assembly District Candidates Forum. Tonight's candidates are Xavier Santiago, William Smith, and Tamika Mapp. This morning, Edward Gibbs gave us a notice that due to unforeseen circumstances, he will not be able to attend tonight's event. So I'm Sideria Asbury Crestfield, and I'm honored to be your host tonight. Sean Hill and I are two of the co-founders of the Greater Harlem Coalition. This event is co-sponsored by the Greater Harlem Coalition, a collective of over 150 Block associations, small businesses, faith-based organizations, and not-for-profits, and the Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association. We're all united in the mission to make Harlem a place where everyone can strive. At GHC, we use data to highlight the challenges our community faces. We've shown how New York City and New York State have oversaturated our neighborhood with treatment programs and shelters, serving New Yorkers from other areas outside of Harlem, contributing to systemic issues and quality of life concerns. Our goal is to locate small-scale, effective programs spread throughout all neighborhoods in New York City to reduce the concentration of such services in communities of color. Tonight, our focus is on three critical topics: oversaturation, structural racism, and addiction. By the end of the forum, you should have a clearer understanding of where our candidates stand on these issues. So here's a brief rundown of tonight's program. Our moderators will guide the discussion and ensure each candidate has a fair chance to speak. Our team member, Brian, will keep track of time and signal when candidates exceed their allotted time. If you'd like to ask questions, please use Zoom's Q&A feature and not the chat. My partner, Sean Hill, will get to as many audience questions as possible towards the end of the forum. Before we conclude tonight's event, we're going to ask you to participate in a poll to get your thoughts on who you are likely to vote for. We'll share the results of the poll with you tomorrow. So tonight, moderators are Nye Whitaker, a lifelong East Harlem resident with a remarkable journey from public housing to serving as a senior advisor in the White House. Nye is also a local small business owner and a professor at NYU who can be seen introducing President Obama in an Emmy award-winning documentary about the Apollo Theater, currently available on Prime Video. On May 1st, tomorrow, Nye will receive a Crain's 2024 Woman of Influence Award for her commitment to serving the city of New York, and congratulations again. We also have Kirsten Crestfield. Kirsten is a management consultant at Ernst & Young with an MBA from Duke University, where she specialized in social entrepreneurship. Recently, she's been reconsidering her future in corporate America. To broaden her interests, she's exploring the astrology of revolutions and acquiring skills in restoring old homes. And Kirsten is also my daughter. So please enjoy the forum, ask questions, and engage with our candidates. Let's make the most of our time together to build a better future for Harlem. Now I'd like to turn it over to the president of the Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association, Madeline Stokely.
Thank you so much, Sideria. I'm so glad to be here this evening and part of this very important event. The Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association is a 501c3 community-based all-volunteer organization that was incorporated in 1981. Our catchment area covers Madison Avenue to Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, 124th Street to 117th Street. MMPCA came about at a time when the neglect at every level of government made what was once a glorious and elegant community a place of fear and destruction. The community's long-term residents and those newly arrived came together to restore the physical and cultural beauty of the recently designated Mount Morris Historic District and the surrounding areas. 43 years ago, we were, just as we are today, determined to ensure that our community is a place where we can live joyful lives and flourish. While we have won many battles, the war is not over. The struggle continues. We are pleased to partner with GHC in this important work of shining the light on the unfair, intentionally designed structures that have resulted in the oversaturation of drug treatment facilities and the resulting consequences that fall upon the people. We hold every level of government responsible. For as the saying goes, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Thank you, candidates, for stepping up to the public service challenge and participating in this evening's forum. I now turn it over to Nye Whitaker. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. We so appreciate you being here with us in community. We know that the Knicks are playing and the sun is shining, but we also know that this is a very important time of year. It's a time for civic engagement and participation. And as the late, great Representative John Lewis said, the vote is precious. It is, my friend, almost sacred. It is the most powerful, nonviolent instrument we have in our democracy, and the most important tool that we have to create a more perfect union. So thank you for being here with us this evening, and let's get started. So the first task at hand is to invite the candidates that are here with us to give a 1-minute introduction. We will be timing you, and there will be no music and no red flashing lights. And so we're gonna get started in order. And so we're gonna start alphabetically by last name with Tamika Mapp. Tamika, the floor is yours for a 1-minute introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tamika Mapp. I am a mother, a sister, a military veteran, a district leader and a state committee woman. My family ties provide the discipline and the conflict resolutions that I have today. My military training also created the discipline and collaboration working with others. And my district leader and my state committee roles provide my governance skills on how to write resolutions and how to collaborate with elected officials and community members to get everything together. I have 3 cats and 1 dog. I have a 12-year-old. I have a 36-year-old. Most importantly, I have 432 girls that looks up to me, and I look up to them as a Girl Scout leader for the district. So it's nice to be here again, and I can't wait to share my views with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for staying on time. Next up, in alphabetical order, we will have Xavier Santiago.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Greater Harlem Coalition, Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association, and all the organizers for making this event possible. I'd also like to thank the other candidates for joining us. We see the importance of engaging in these forums. It's important for the community and voters to know us on a deeper level. As a father of 2 boys and 2 fur children, I know how important this seat is and what it means to all of us in El Barrio, East Harlem. I'm running because our community desperately needs leadership. Leadership we've been lacking these several years. The challenges we face are much too real. From public safety to the affordability crisis, this community needs leadership in Albany to deliver real results. I've hired locally with our film productions here, based out of East Harlem. My company's work and service on CB11 have set the model for change in the neighborhood. But now more than ever, we need that lead by example attitude in Albany. I have a plan for our way forward, and I look forward to sharing our roadmap as we go through this forum. One where our children, families, and seniors can walk safely on our streets, put food on our tables. We need someone who can deliver the resources, and with my track record of leadership, we can get the results we deserve, a better, brighter East Harlem.
What's up? William Smith.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again to the Mount Morris Park Improvement Association and the Greater Harlem Coalition for putting this forum together. Very important that we ensure that all the candidates get the opportunity to talk about their platforms, but more importantly, that our community members get to ask us and engage with us in a productive dialogue. Running for a state assembly, as I'm a lifelong resident of East Harlem. I'm one of the only candidates that's born and raised in East Harlem, and one of the only candidates that has tangible, transferable government experience. I've advocated for minority women-owned businesses at the MTA. Also advocated for transit workers at the Transport Workers Union, where we were effective in sponsoring and seeing passes of legislation for 2 pieces of legislation. I was a part of the organizing and advocacy team. So I have transferable experience in terms of initiating and effectuating legislative change. It's time for East Harlem to have an assembly member that has a boots on the ground approach and a focus on coalition building and ensuring that we're not only bringing everyone together, but making sure that everyone has the tools and the perspective and the information that they need to be a part of a coalition-based advocacy approach for advancing the interests of East Harlem and the 68th District on a more broader basis. We need to focus on providing more youth services as a way of thinking about crime prevention, and also focus on mental health as a way to incrementally address some of the substance abuse issues that we have in our community.
That is time, William. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Lightning round, just something fast and fun for each of you, and I'll go back around the room, which is name your favorite small business in the 68th Assembly District. Tamika Mapp.
You said one. I can't just have one. I have a lot. So
It's okay. You just get one. Clock is ticking. What did you say?
Supports.
Awesome. Xavier. You're on mute.
Sorry, La Fonda.
Awesome. William.
I would say Direct Print, which is a minority business on 125th Street, and it's always great that we support our local businesses.
Thank you all for that. And I know that you're going to probably get lots in trouble for only picking one when there are many, but we appreciate that. Before I turn it over, I just want to leave everyone with a very important statement from Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. I do wear another hat as the executive director of the W.E.B. Du Bois Center for Freedom and Democracy, and that is that there can be no perfect democracy curtailed by color, race, or poverty, but with all, we accomplish all, even peace. And now I'm going to kick it over to my partner in this moderated effort, and that's Kirsten Crisfield. Kristen, the floor is yours.
Nye, thank you for that turnover, and to the candidates, thank you so much for each of your introductions. I want to acknowledge here that I have about 5 questions that I want to get through, and the goal will be to give you all about 2 minutes each to answer the questions. As we dive into the dialogue, though, I will likely pivot based on some of the things that I've heard and try to make this a more dynamic discussion rather than like one by one, acknowledging that that's kind of the setup of the forum, but we want to have more of a dialogue here for people to listen to. So the first question I have up is, have you ever received or solicited funding from entities that benefit from the sites that are oversaturating our communities? This can be from developers, landlords, business owners, etc.
No.
No.
Nice. Love a good, easy one. Glad we're starting off there. So another one for you. Our small businesses are really struggling. I was at Jinjan a few weeks ago. There was a press conference right outside his door, and we were talking about just the pomp and circumstance that surrounds the reality of living in our community. We have a lot of politicians that come in, take pictures, move right along, and the problems don't necessarily change. They wake up or come in every morning and are having to clean the outside of their coffee shop, and they've been doing the same thing for years. And many people have promised that things were going to change. They're the only people in that building. It's easy for them to become a target, and they're trying to be some of the change agents that get things done. So my question for you is, how do you plan to help small businesses overcome the challenges related to the oversaturation, structural racism, and addiction in our community? And we'll start with Tamika, and we'll do a round robin from there. And I'll also acknowledge we'll go backwards too, so Tamika isn't on the hot seat up front every time.
It's fine. It starts with a collaboration and a dialogue with all of our small businesses, and making sure that our small businesses on point and our elected officials sit at the table on a monthly basis to try to figure out how we can support each other in that process. So for my role as the state committee, I have been doing just that, just collaborating with On Point, making sure I understand their views, where they're coming from, and also the small businesses as well, to understand where the small business is coming from. And for us to be able to curtail this issue, we all have to work together and kind of like give a negotiation. No business should have crap outside of their storefronts on a daily basis, and they shouldn't have to clean it up as well. And that's where my vision of making sure that Inez Dickinson's bill have some meats and potatoes to be able to put it forth for the second year in a row to make sure that we spread out our fair share of our services that we have.
Thank you for that, Tamika. And I'm going to put a pin in that, the Inez Dickens bill. I'm going to want to come back to it for the group and want to share some more context for the participants on what that bill means for the community. Xavier, over to you.
Thank you. A lot of that work, the boots on the ground, it's important for, you have to have all three levels of government interacting together towards a holistic solution. A lot of the wrongs were taken off when we had like Senate Bill 2523 that was passed several years ago. Again, what it made it easier is to change how healthcare is being distributed, how we're addressing the crisis. Having had someone and in my own family suffer from addiction, and also here where I live on 102nd, having someone pass out after taking an injection of fentanyl, and I had to administer microbursts and Narcan. It really, you look at it holistically and how it impacts the community writ large, because at this point in time, we're actually causing generational harm, which is much like with the medical redlining we've been seeing happen now. So how do we cure that? You need to get funding from the federal government. Having a good working relationship with our legislators and Congress and then the Senate is crucial. But then also having the working partnership in the Assembly for a desaturation model where we're actually addressing things holistically, where we're getting people into recovery track, recovery centric. For example, Dr. Singh over at Mount Sinai, they've already leaned in through our partnership with Community Board 11 and have started redistributing and meeting people where they're at. So they had several pluses come up when they've had people go from methadone to buprenorphine and are now completely clean and not relying on any substances. And they're also be able to, and this is one of the advantages of the pandemic, is they were able to send people home with methadone for several days, sometimes even a week's long recovery track. So what they found is that by spreading out and meeting people where they are, they're desaturating. And again, this goes back to anything we've studied, whether it's been poverty, crime, wealth, even in healthcare. When you concentrate everything, it becomes a self-perpetuating model. And that's what we're experiencing. So we have to change legislation in the state that becomes a recovery-centric model. And again, takes an approach with partnership from our local businesses. So we have the bid there on 125th that's starting up so that they are not shoulder the fair burden. I'm sorry, Brian, I couldn't hear you. You said time?
Yeah, time.
Okay, thank you. But I would like to come back to the bid later. Thank you.
William, over to you.
All right. Well, I'm hearing a few proposals here. The main question was how would you support the small businesses that are dealing with the oversaturation? I did not hear tangible answers, honestly, in my opinion, from either of the candidates. What we need is we want to ensure that they are. We heard that they would be have a seat at the table, and that would be very important. But how long have we been having dialogues in our community over the years about these issues? It's time that we have an action-oriented approach. We need to ensure that the pieces of legislation that's already on the table, the next assembly member needs to make sure that that is their top priority, that they are not only just a co-sponsor, but they are a champion. And this is something that they champion every day, both through the press and both through messaging, to ensure that there can be better awareness on the state legislature and make sure that other members across the state and the state assembly and the state senate are aware of the legislative adjustments that have been recommended and how those could better impact East Harlem, but impact their districts as well in terms of fair share. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our community. They generate jobs. They ensure that we have sales tax and income tax revenue for these small businesses. We want to ensure that their input is better incorporated and that they have a better seat at the table when shaping these legislative reforms or enforcing better public safety measures in these areas. Because like I said, we want to ensure that we foster better economic growth in East Harlem When we think about commercial areas like Third Avenue, from 125th Street all the way to 103rd or 104th Street, and we think about other areas such as 116th Street, 106th Street, and 125th. These are areas where we need to ensure that we have solid police presence, but not an oppressive regime. We need results and ensure that public safety is upheld so that these small businesses can generate business and economic output.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. And you all touched on legislation in different ways. So for this next question, I'd love to understand what policy or law that you've written or supported specific to alleviating some of the oversaturation challenges that we're facing. And as we talk about the policy, I would like to really underscore the majority of the people on this call do not speak political. Like, they're not going to know if you go into A1BC35. So if you can name the bill as it's stated, but give us a one-sentence explanation on what the bill actually means and how it affects the community before you dive into like how you've supported it. And this time I'd like to go backwards. So William, can we kick off with you? And I'll repeat the question. What policy or law have you written or supported specific to alleviating the oversaturation of drug treatment facilities in the district?
I have not sponsored any policies, as I'm only a volunteer elected district leader in the 68th district. But
Okay.
I've advocated for the community engagement bill sponsored by Congressman Espaillat. I attended the press conference, and I intend to make sure that we build greater capacity around that piece of legislation on the federal level.
Can you explain for the audience what that community engagement bill is or what it entails? And you don't have to be on the hot seat if somebody else can jump in and add context.
It mandates that there be community engagement in regards to the distribution of drug treatment programs in communities.
Okay, thank you for that. Xavier, over to you.
Thank you, Kirsten. There currently is, we've mentioned already Inez's bill, but that hasn't gotten traction. What I would propose bringing to Albany, and what we do need, is to have a desaturation where we're locating these particular treatment centers into the districts where they have the greatest amount of need. And you need to, with community engagement, and having been the chair of Community Board 11, even though we're advisory, they should be taking on our input. I wouldn't want to see legislation pass very similar to the ULIT process, having that amount of teeth that OASIS would be required, just like SLA is, to take on our recommendation as whether or not. Could you hear me? Sorry.
You mentioned a process that I didn't understand the word of, but then you said.
Oh, so the State Liquor Authority, right? So the State Liquor Authority, the community boards weigh in on new restaurants getting their full liquor license or their wine and beer license. This is something we recommended to be done before the State Liquor Authority will actually approve the license. Now, what should happen with this going forward with OASIS is I would present legislation that would require the same model, that they would have to come before the community board and the community engagement to make sure all partners and stakeholders are involved. The same thing needs to happen with the desaturation. That's going to take a more forceful tone of legislation where we can actually transition and work with our private partners here, like Mount Sinai and others who actually have been working with us to meet people where they're at, to go to the other communities where they're needed. So I think from that point of view, it's about the legislation that will be presented, because a lot of the legislation, and I case in point, I don't have the bill number here, when Robert Rodriguez, our former assembly member, he tried to present similar legislation and that would put any treatment center 500 feet away from a school or place of worship, but he got no traction in it. But now we're at a fever pitch that we can actually represent that legislation and get tenable results. And I think we can all agree to that here at this forum.
Can I ask just for one moment that if anyone is referencing any entities or agencies, that they please use their full name and not abbreviations, just so that everyone who's here with us can fully understand the name of the organization in our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Naim.
So, all right, so there's a lot to unpack over here. So we heard that, we need some more meat and potatoes and have the community board have a voice like the URLA. But, when it comes to the community board, there's no voices at the community board. No one actually hears the community board. Assemblymember Inez Dickens, she has the bill, which has been in Albany for 2 years. The reason why it hasn't been any traction is because our elected officials didn't want to pick it up. right? So I had been writing a resolution to include the restriction of making sure that it resembles like Xavier said, to kind of like mirror the liquor and the cigarette stores. I'm the first one that came out with that for the total of 4 years and been working on that bill for the total of 4 years. When we introduced it to the community board, it was always pushback from the community board. It was waiting a slow crawl before the community board to take action. So how I will strengthen Inez Dickinson bill is making sure that we have working relationships like I do already with Harvey Epstein, which is a downtown state assembly member. He wants to get on the bill. He's looking for somebody to get on the bill. It just needs to be flushed out a little bit more. When On Point came inside of our communities, right? Me and William was the only two people outside while our chair was going inside to talk about how great this was for our community when it was not really good for our community. So I'm really the only candidate that's here has been working with the Greater Harlem Coalition, working with our elected officials and working with the community to actually see that we can spread out the safe consumption site that we have in our communities.
I appreciate your candor for that one.
So, Kirsten, can I just, if you don't mind, respectfully, just state facts clearly? I wasn't supportive. We had a moratorium in place when they cited it here, and that was through Bill de Blasio. So I just want all the attendees to be aware historically. The facts are the facts, is that we had a moratorium and they cited it here in the community without our permission. And they did, and it's factual, lie to the community board in October. DOH, MH lied to the community board and said they had no plans of placing here. So I just want to be abundantly clear for everyone watching so we have facts straight. Thank you.
Well, let's transition to talking about that moratorium then, more specifically, because I personally don't know that.
Thank you.
So the question that I have around the moratorium here, Community Board 11 previously passed that moratorium on new sightings of homeless shelters and drug rehabilitation sites. What is the status of that moratorium now? We understand that it was passed, but what is it meaning on the ground? How have each of you seen it, engaged with it? Let's talk about it.
Okay, would you like me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Xavier.
We've been chasing down all our electeds, and we now have Congressman Espiat, who lives at the Smile. He's now seeing it. He's been leaning into the issues with it. As an advisory, and anyone who's read the city charter, as dry as it may be as a document, we're advisory, and we need partnership at the city, state, and federal level. Espiat's been leaning in. We obviously have a lack of leadership and the assembly level, and we don't have enough representation all the way around at the state level to actually change those laws that led to this particular organization coming into our neighborhood. Now, as to the impact, we've been trying to work with some of those partners, and not all of them have been good partners. And this is why at this point in time, we'll be renewing it. We renewed it last year, beefed it up, and we have been trying to work with our partners. And again, everyone here in this room, everyone who in the attendees, we have to hear from you. If people are not speaking up and showing up, then it does not give the full empowerment that we deserve. Now, if you look at someone like Gail Brewer, she listens to her community board and she believes in that, but she was also the borough president. And so Mark Levine has seen this saturation issue. He is now taking it seriously, and it's up to us to partner. And as the assembly member, I will fight to change the laws so that we can have a more equitable distribution of treatment centers throughout the city and state, and one that actually invests in programs that help through a recovery-centric model.
Could I respond? I just want to briefly respond to that, and I won't belabor the point. We have spoken up about that, Xavier. All of us have had, we were part of having rallies. We were part of having both informal and formal conversations with elected officials. A lot of the points that I hear you make that I hear that you said that you're an advisory component, and I hear a lot of trying. The next assembly member needs to be someone who's action-oriented and is results and solutions-based, not focused on, I'm going to try, I'm going to hear you out. We need people that hear people out and initiate and effectuate change. So everyone, please think about who will effectuate change and has a record and a track record of effectuating change, not talking about trying and advising. We've had enough advisory through the time in our community. We need results.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask a follow-up. As we watch, you mentioned Gail Brewer build community and is able to move mountains, not only in her own district, but in partnering districts in collaboration. Something like the moratorium could be used to build a groundswell, right? For the need for fair share to be used and implemented. I'd like just to ask a follow-up question. If you were elected, how would you use something like the moratorium to build not just local support, but citywide support in recognition of the oversaturation and to make sure that there is fair share allocation going forward? And I'm going to do a round robin, if you don't mind, to my fellow moderator. So I'm going to start with Tamika and then go to Xavier and then go to William. You'll each have 1 minute to respond. So Tamika.
All right, so what I've been doing as the state committee woman, partner up with upstate elected officials. They want to have a treatment center similar to On Point in their communities, but their elected officials don't want it. So leaning on to other state committee members, leaning on to other district leaders, making sure that we can carry that moratorium across the state is not only an issue of New York City, is across the whole state. And upstate New York is really want to partner with our elected officials. They just couldn't figure out what elected official they want to partner on for the moratorium.
Thank you so much. Xavier?
So I think when it comes to how do we carry forth the work of the moratorium, and you'll remember having been during the height of the pandemic in 2020 and 21 when we actually activated that, we've gotten results, and the results are Mount Sinai. And excuse me if I'm fighting off a chest cold, everyone. Mount Sinai has been reducing the amount of people on 125th Street along that corridor. They're expanding and sending them to other parts of the city. Those are tenable results because we leaned in, they listened, and now we're trying to work towards a solution that is actually being activated. So seeing that happen, now we need that from all the other partners. And Congressman Esmiat is working with us in that partnership to carry on that work of that moratorium, is to pass legislation that will, again, anytime one is cited, it has to go through an approval process. But before we do that, we have to desaturate the community right now. Otherwise, economically, we will not thrive. That corridor, the 125th Street corridor, should be a commercial tourist trap. So with that, I'll present legislation to that end. So thank you.
And William.
Thank you. How would I build support for that to expand, ensure that moratorium is preserved? We have to ensure that we get a council resolution in the city council imploring the state legislature and the federal government to pass the legislation to ensure that oversaturation no longer becomes an issue in East Harlem, and that we better spread it across the city of New York, or more broadly, the state of New York, as thinking of it as a state assembly member. I would also push for letters of support from the county parties, because as a person who's as a member of the an elected district leader, I know how important it is for us to interface with our elected officials, and how they appreciate and understand the importance of the political process in shaping advocacy and policy. So I would push for letters of support and ensuring that we also provide more media attention and consistent media attention and advocacy on the ground around this issue. We need to move from being capacity building and focus on just driving needle forward.
Thank you. I'll kick it back to my fellow moderator.
Thank you. And we have the Q&A chat open. So I want to acknowledge that, again, the GHC's focuses on oversaturation, structural racism, and the complex issues of addiction. So while there are a huge number of issues that we could tackle, we're trying to center our conversation on those three topics. And if you have additional questions to ask, absolutely continue to put them in the chat thread, and we're going to have that conversation with the group in about 15, 20 minutes or so. So going back to the whole idea of creating a lot of legislation, so much of our conversation right now has come around traction and enacting bills. But so much of what we also said is that these bills get stuck. How do you guys plan to look at the reality of where we are today? We need more friends. We need more alliances. We need more community. How do each of you plan on making friends, as the most simple question to ask, as you go about navigating the relationships in this community? And this time I'm going to go backwards. So William, Xavier, and then Tamika.
Well, thank you for that question. Well, for one, I already have relationships with various state legislators already. And correspond with them on a regular basis. I've interfaced with Natalia Fernandez, who's the chair of the addiction Substance Abuse Committee in the state Senate, and I've talked to her about the Greater Harlem Coalition's legislative platform, and I want to make sure we have a follow-up conversation. The way to build relationships is to make sure you go to those legislators' districts, understand their issues, understand how we can incorporate the plights of all of our districts to come together for legislative changes, find ways to find common ground on from a budgetary perspective when it's that time, so that way we can push for resources that translate to tangible reform in our communities, but also can be spread across. We need an assembly member that builds political capacity in our community, but also is able to empower the rest of our community members to expand their relationships and their networks in these districts. So that way, it's not just the legislator who has the relationship, the district leader, your state committee member, your tenant president, regular community members have relationships in these districts because of the assembly member facilitating these introductions and conversations. We need to remove the veil. We need to educate our community about civics, which I've done for several years, and so that way our community can understand how to navigate government when you're looking to effectuate change. We need results and have an action-based approach. I've said that before. I will continue to say that because that's what the voters are looking for. They want results, but they want consistency and they want tangible experience to get the results done.
Thank you, William. Xavier.
Yes, thank you. One of my early mentors when I first got into producing said to me, Xavier, you're not put on this earth for people to get you. You're here to get people. And the sooner you do that, you're going to start seeing results. And I think that's what this is about. It's about building a coalition like the one we built here in East Harlem. And it's about building a coalition up in Albany. And you have to have that partnership. And that's like Karina Reyes, Assemblywoman Karina Reyes, who's a practicing nurse. We were talking at a Three Kings Day event about how healthcare became so dysfunctional. Stuff that as Gen Xers, she wasn't aware of because I actually grew up with my dad as a retired physician. And that's why we have a lot of the crises we do now. And I think when you build a coalition, you can create consensus, no different than the work I've done here on the community board, having served on, you have the borough board, you have borough service cabinet, which play a huge integral part with working with our city agencies. And you're going to build the same relationship with the state agencies. That work is how we build a coalition, how we build consensus to then present legislation that you can have partners even across the aisle. It doesn't matter because we all want to see a result that builds health, builds wealth, and actually creates a better, brighter community. And again, as I tongue-in-cheek talk about correcting the wrongs of Robert Moses, we have to do that, is to build that consensus. And since I already have a lot of working relationships with our electeds in the state, I think I can carry on building those relationships and deliver results for this community. And that will be my goal, not on January 25th, but the 26th, the work starts then.
Thank you. Tamika.
Already have relationships with majority of the state assembly members, majority of the state senate, because I'm the only one that goes to Albany every single time when it's the budget. I'm there from January all the way through June. I'm listening to their constituents. I'm with different organizations fighting for different bills that will be supporting the community. So I'm already have those relationships built in, and they're kind of like excited and waiting for me to get there. So I don't have to keep on going with different organizations to get bills passed in there. Not alone that I have relationships with individuals and the state elected officials, I have relationships with each and every constituent. Because at the end of the day, the constituent is what drives us to be their voice in Albany. And I've been helping our constituents finding their voice through different avenues, letter writing, scheduling lobby days to go to Albany, talking about oversaturation plenty of times, writing postcards to our elected officials, right? Because we only as good as our community. And like William said, our community has a voice and they're just looking for somebody that's willing to show them and to guide them exactly how to use their voice at that particular moment, wherever their voice may be. It could be letter writing, it could be social media, it could be a phone call, which I'm already doing now. I just got done wrapping up our last lobby day for oversaturation and hoping to get Inez Dickinson bill passed. But, you know, we need a little bit more meat and potatoes in that. And like I tell everybody, we're only going to get the change if we all do it together. It's no particular me. I'm just the vessel. I'm just your voice to help move the needle and to have those uncomfortable conversations when people don't want to address those conversations. And oversaturation and drug use is one of those hard conversations that everybody likes to dance around. I don't. right? The reason why Vancouver just introduced the gross misdemeanor back into it, because they had an oversight, they had at one point. I'll go back to that because I know you got a question for that one. I'll come back. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to pivot us now to some more structural racism conversations. It seems like we're getting the oversaturation is definitely a hot topic here, but I want to give us space to incorporate other things because it all feeds into the same problem. So I'm going to transition to some more of those questions, but we're going to ask you some more about how you get participants to turn out. People are really disenfranchised right now. We're going to come back around to that too, but want to plant that seed. How do you get people to believe in you and show up for the future? But as you think about that question, the next question up I have for you is related to structural racism. When someone in our community is battling addiction, they're treated differently than someone that lives in another part of the city. Someone in our backyard with an addiction is sent to jail. Their peers are sent to Shady Oaks Spa and rehab. And how do you think we level the playing field for access to care? Where would you aim to increase funding to change some of that work? And potentially before it's even needed in the first place. Once somebody's addicted to drugs, it's already too late. How do we swim upstream and offer different services that allow people to not enter into that space in the first place? And this time I'm going to go back to the start. We're going to start with Tamika, Xavier, and William and go from there.
Well, I always say that our federal government know how to solve this problem. Federal government introduced drugs into our community, especially the Black and Brown community. So we're just going to call it as it is, right? Since the federal government gave us drugs because they was trying to tear up our Black and Brown families and find an easy way to do it, we have to address the trauma that we have. And racism is the only way to address it, right? So like you said, the counterpart go to a nice facility, we get strung out over and over again. And it goes back to actually being aware that we need to talk to those who has the drug addiction problem and making sure we know how to support them. For instance, On Point got here, but they never asked somebody who was strung up on drugs, what did that facility supposed to look like? Right? The reason why they're still on the street is because it's a 25-minute wait to get high. No one's going to wait 25 minutes to get high. So when we start introducing different policies, we actually need to be talking to those who is already in recovery. And how can we make sure that the next person's lives can get saved by utilizing their voices? Because the person who is actually in the problem has all the solutions that we have, and we just need to listen to them. We don't listen to them. We just like, oh, there's some federal money for safe injection site. Let's put up the safe injection site. There's some money for needles. Let's start giving out needles. But we don't really give them a space to get into the underlying trauma that they have, right? Some drug addiction is trauma-based, some of it is chemical-based. And so how do we do that? We need to make sure that our healthcare system has mental health already baked in, and there's no cap on mental health whatsoever. Mental health is like you're going to go get your yearly checkup. You can go see your provider. You can see the services, right? And if you're using drugs to overcome those things, why are you using drugs? And the only way we can do that is by bringing peer-to-peer advocacy into our communities.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tamika.
You're welcome.
Over to you.
Thank you. I think we're going to be singing from the same hymn sheet on this one when it comes to the budget. And we need to fund programs that benefit the same way that privately funded insurance covers when it comes to recovery. And, I think many people who are watching this forum have had people who they've been addicted to drugs and gone through recovery and how hard that is, whether it's alcoholism, heroin, you name it. And you have to get people on a recovery-centric track. And to do that, you have to extract them from the environment they're in, because oftentimes usually it's trauma that's occurred in their life. And obviously our community has experienced it's a disproportionate share of that. If you take a circle in northern Manhattan, the South Bronx, we have the highest concentration of public housing on the world. And because of what happened during the war on drugs, we were impacted for generations. So first, we have to make sure while we protect the current younger generation, we have to help those get the same recovery models, same access to care. And I think when you can pass legislation, all right, with the Single Payer Act, New York, so with their healthcare bill, That's something that they need to add amendments to that covers people going into recovery to get them out of this environment here, to get them upstate to where they can actually not be influenced by people that are dragging them back down, not exposing them to, hey man, you want a taste? They actually giving them the care and solving to the root cause of their problems. So it's not about subduing symptoms, it's curing the cause. And oftentimes they don't have community. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people suffering, and it breaks my heart because they don't have someone that they could lean into and actually say, this is why I'm hurting, because I was sexually abused. And I've been suppressing it all this time. And you talk to anyone who's gone through that recovery, they've had someone they could lean into. So you have to create a recovery model where we can get them removed, extracted from the community, deal with their problems, get them on a recovery model like what they're doing at Mount Sinai, and have them have a new lease on life, a new passion on life. So in passing legislation, we need to make sure we employ that into the budget and make sure that we get the same resources that the wealthier New Yorkers already have access to.
William.
All right, thank you. And I've noticed that neither of the candidates gave a tangible answer to the question in terms of how do you address structural racism. When you mentioned that those that are of color in run up against racism, I'm trying to be as eloquent and culturally sensitive with my response as possible. When you have individuals are suffering from substance abuse and they run in and they go into a clinic, we want to ensure that the workers there, the counselors, the treatment professionals, the healthcare professionals have that they are current on their cultural sensitivity training, as well as having an understanding of how difficult it can be for one who's dealing with mental health or substance abuse issues, or both together, and how difficult it can be to get on the track record to non-usage. We need to focus on prevention and addressing the core reasons why some may need substances, unfortunately. Some of them are dealing with income insecurity. We need to advocate in the budget for a better tax system that's equitable for lower income communities. We need affordable housing that addresses housing for low income housing and moderate income housing. So that way, as families are able to grow their incomes and grow their families, they're able to live in our community. I do not agree with Mr. Santiago's mention in terms of extracting those that are dealing with substance abuse from our community. If you are from East Harlem, or if you are from Harlem, you're from Northern Manhattan, we don't want you to leave. We want you to stay, but we want to give you the resources and the support so that way you can thrive and you can live in our community and be on a better path. Everyone has a past. Everyone has the challenges. We don't want you to leave. We want you to stay. But we want to make sure you have the umbrella of support, and that we are a village, and that you know that we are all here in open arms to support you. We need our workers to have that understanding and that appreciation when communicating with members that are dealing with substance abuse, and also make sure they have that cultural sensitivity, and also think about the language barriers. We need to address that and make sure that that's a core focus, because sometimes there's different cultural problems, and we need to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that response. And I want to challenge a statement. I really felt like this question in particular, each of the candidates did a great job of addressing structural racism, even if it wasn't called out explicitly. I felt that this was a particular answer that gave concrete examples and said, we're going to do A, B, C. So want to acknowledge that I heard that and want to put it out there on the floor that it was said for this question in particular. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nye to facilitate the next transition.
Sure. Thank you so much. And we started to talk about it earlier, which is civic engagement. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer a question that's very specific, and then I'm going to follow up with some dates and details and information that all who are with us today need to know to activate civically. So I'm going to start with William. What specifically will your campaign be doing to increase voter turnout and civic engagement in advance of the June and November elections? You've got 30 seconds to respond.
I intend to distribute information, basic information about how to navigate government in terms of the state, city, federal, legislative, and budgetary process, and also ensure that we focus on educating the community about how government can serve them, and also focus on getting more of our community members registered to vote. We have to get all of us activated ahead in the primary, but also thinking about the general election. So this is a great opportunity for us to get the entire 68th energized to vote in a more focused manner.
Thank you so much. Tamika Mapp?
Well, what I've always been doing, calling voters, knocking on their doors, engaging with them I do that every day. Every day is an election to me. Not just on election time, because every year in Manhattan we have an election. So every year around January, February, March, and April, I'm calling our disenfranchised voters, meaning those who don't normally get a call because they're not a regular voter. Those who are others and those who are and stuff like that. So I've been calling people actively for years.
Thank you. Xavier Santiago?
Yes. Phone calls, mail, door to door, grassroots operation. Our team is out there making sure they're activated for primary day and beyond. I think it's important that everyone leans in, because during the height of the pandemic, June 2020, we had 12,000 voters. 2 years ago, we had 8,000. We can do better and we should do better. And that's why we're in the situation we are now. So that's why we'll be leaning in every step of the way until voting day.
Thank you all so much. And so I'm going to take a pause for a little mini civic engagement commercial. If you have a pen and paper, if you want to copy out of the chat or snap a photo of the chat, here are the dates that you need to know. So the next primary election that will include these state candidates and our representation at the assembly and the state level, as well as the congressional level. Monday, June 10th is the last day to postmark if you are if you are voting by mail. June 10th, first date you need to know. Saturday, June 15th through Sunday, June 23rd is early voting. If you have not exercised your right to early vote, it took us 10 years in the state of New York to bring the tool of early voting to you. Don't wait to election day. I say election day is like tax day. If there's a snowstorm, we've had it. If there's a rainstorm, we've had it. If the subways are flooded and you can't get to your poll site, you want to make sure that you've practiced early voting. Make a plan to vote. Saturday, June 15th, new in the state of New York. It will be the last day that you can register to vote in person. So the first day of early voting is also the last day to register to vote in person. Last but not least, if you want to register via early absentee ballot request, the deadline to request that is Monday, June 24th. And of course, Tuesday, June 25th is the primary election. Luckily, these great groups have created a civic engagement guide, which we've dropped into the chat and has been emailed to everyone here and will be available through their newsletter and on their website so that you can stay informed and be civically engaged. And now I believe it's the time for questions. Is that correct? We're going to kick it over to Sean. What do we have going on in the chat?
So Nye, one of the questions actually was about small businesses in the community. And if, of course, we all recall that that was one of the very early questions in this forum. Perhaps the candidates could talk about what they are hearing from the small businesses of in the 68th district and what the concerns are and what they intend to do to address those concerns.
Great. I think we should do a 1 minute so that everyone has a chance to make a comment on that. So I'm going to do another round robin. I'll start in the middle this time with Xavier Santiago. What are you hearing from the community and what's something specific that we can do to address it?
And we can give you we'll give you
2 minutes. Great. I do want to just address something from the last segment, Mr. Smith. Misconstrued. There was a model mentioned by our moderator, Kirsten, with Shady Acres, I believe is, and that is a model where they actually get the person into a recovery track, but they get them to a separate location. So again, emphasizing the truth of what the matter is that focusing on recovery centric, but we always want people to come back home. That's important. And I know so many people who've recovered, who've come back home, and they are welcome and loved here. So with the businesses, what the businesses are hearing and what we're hearing from all of them is that they want it to feel safe. They need people to come in. There's a safety issue. And again, we have, if you look at the stats, a lot of them are saying like, listen, we have concerns. There was the shooting over at Wagner a couple of weeks ago. And then the same day, a retaliation shooting at Jefferson, where 2 people, and then over at Johnson. A lot of people are aware of this. So I think a lot of the businesses, one, it's the quality of life they're raising. They want to be able to have people come in, stay late, like they used to 10 years ago. So I think that's something that they would like to see change. And I frequent all of the businesses on a regular basis.
And I just want to add, let's be mindful. If you use part of your time to comment on a particular response, we're still going to hold you to the 2 minutes. So please consider using your time wisely. I'm going to go to Tamika Mapp.
Woo! All right. So what I've been hearing is people can't come in my business at all because our community members is outside shooting up or taking a crap or peeing. I'm going to go back to my original point. This is why it's very important to get our proper funding for our peer-to-peer advocates, to making sure that our community members know where the services are in our community. We have a whole bunch of programs that some of our community members are not utilizing because why? No one's telling them. And the only way you can tell another person where help is if you have to be in that situation. I do all the time. I walk the street all the time on 116th Street. It's starting to look like 125th Street. I'll call Diana Ayala this morning and say, hey, we need to get peer-to-peer advocates out here so we can be able to clean up our streets. And the only way we're going to do this is making sure, like we said, boots on the ground, actually in the community every day, utilizing our voices and bringing our peers back into the community to guide them to the resources. That's been cut, right? When we had peer-to-peer funding, we didn't have this. When Picture the Homeless was up on 126, where On Point was, we didn't have this. We had them, but we didn't have nothing like this because we need to bring those programs back.
Great. William Smith?
Thank you. The small businesses in my conversation, they've talked about the challenges in terms of the public safety, obviously, and have requested that the next assembly member have a focus on better liaising with the police department, advocating for resources so that way we're not creating a police regime, but a police force that's focused on preserving public safety so that way we can have the economic output and the commercial growth that we need in East Harlem. These small businesses depend on foot traffic and spending. We need to ensure that we provide better incentives for these small business owners, provide some type of a better tax regime for them in terms of their business so that way they can thrive and we can ensure that they can continue to remain in East Harlem and promote jobs. If our small businesses are growing and they're able to have the proper business volume, then they can justify having the jobs. We need the jobs in our community.
Sean, what do we have next?
So there also have been a couple of comments about smoke shops and that big issue. Perhaps the candidates could talk about the issue of smoke shops in our community.
Right. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. And I would add that not only the smoke shops, but question about the non-approved by the government cannabis and other cannabis-related products in stores that are moving into the community. I'm going to go now in the middle and kind of come back around. So I'll start with Tamika Mapp.
What I have been doing already, calling the sheriff's departments, making sure the sheriffs come and catch them in action so they could put that cease and desist out there. As the elected official, create a heavy fine where they cannot buy their way out for doing this illegally. And making sure that when we have a legalized smoke shop in our community, that we actually see the money coming back in our community. Doing a cease and desist does not stop them to do it because all they're doing is going down two doors down. So we got to be like everybody else. In California, if you have an illegal smoke shop, that is $100,000 fine with that cease and desist. Guess what? They don't have no illegal stuff right there. And those who can do the fine, they can eat it, but they're not going to do it because the state will actually have every LLC right now. Each LLC has to disclose their business to the state of New York. That is something new. And that's how we can track down the illegal smoke shop, because once they get the cease and desist, they change their name. But now we know as a track record of that individual, of that LLC, or what it is. So heavy fines, cease and desist, and making sure they don't come back in our community.
Great. William Smith?
Thank you. We need legislation that puts a cap on the number of smoke shops, period, that may not smoke shops, period. I applaud the state legislature for their recent approvals in the state budget to enhance the enforcement mechanisms for the Office of Cannabis Management. But it's important that they work in concert with the New York City Police Department, as well as the sheriff and also local community leaders to ensure that we're properly identifying these businesses. We also want to ensure that we work with our schools to better educate the schools and our students to understand some of the risks of illegally consuming tobacco products. There have been youth that have consumed cannabis edibles and have had adverse effects and have had to go into the emergency room. I've heard that reports at Metropolitan Hospital. So there's a need for us to really focus on education and ensuring that everyone has the facts, but we need stronger enforcement and we need teeth in the legislation to ensure that we can make sure that our youth and that we don't have this, we can cap the proliferation and reduce the number of smoke shops in East Harlem. And this is something that needs to be done now, and it's something I promised to do day one in the State Assembly.
Thank you. Xavier Santiago?
Thank you. When the Office of Cannabis Management legislation was passed, we called out the failures in it, and that included enforcement. I personally had to call Sheriff Miranda multiple times. We called out the fact that local enforcement was next to impossible. It takes a week just to shut down one. So first things I would do, and although this recent budget did get some movement, it didn't get the traction it should have had and we've advocated for. And that is the fact that you have to put restrictions. If they break the law, then you remove all of their licenses, their lotto license, all of it. Everything has to go. There should also be an area, a limit. So in a community district or within that square mile area, that you can only have so many cannabis shops, so we're not overrun. Those are two crucial issues, and then that would allow for proper licensing, and we get actual businesses activated who are providing goods that are grown here in this state and being sold to people of age. And in case in point, with the Association to Benefit Children, we need more funding for education. And because they actually have the contract when it comes to intervention with the psychiatric episode that happened here with one of our middle schoolers, they bought the edibles from an illegal shop in the afternoon and brought them to school the next day. So it's crucial. The human brain, the adult brain doesn't mature until 25, and it's crucial. We don't want to cause more harm to our youth. So it all starts with education and enforcement. And when I get to Albany, that's what I'm going to fight for. Make sure that those particular line items are put into new legislation. Thank you.
Well, what I would ask is, what has the community board so far done to address this issue, and why has this not been addressed before? Is what I would want everyone to think about. We need to move away from the rhetoric and think about what are the results that have been produced for those who are in positions of influence to address this issue. I don't see a track record addressing these issues so far.
I'm going to interject here. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to interject here. Thank you for the question, William. But again, we would love to keep Sean and I to the questions here to make sure that this does not become a tit for tat dialogue between you and Xavier. I fully understand there's some tension there. It's obvious. It's evident.
Oh, no tension, just accountability.
Okay, I like that word. I'll use that word for you. Accountability, but want to acknowledge that we don't want this to turn into a tit for tat. And I want to come back to a lot of what you've served us on the last question. There was a lot of stuff that came up about youth in particular. Would love to hear, what are your thoughts on how we can offer new opportunities to youth and improve their outcomes for people whose lives were impacted by the pandemic and beyond? There's a million and one things that are happening to our youth today. Let's talk some more about them in general. And I will go Tamika, Xavier, and William on that one. 2 minutes again.
Oh, my babies. Oh, my goodness. As a Girl Scout leader, I have been doing just that, introducing my girls, introducing the community members, being a PTA president, just listening to them and understanding what they need. They need after school programs. They need making sure we have quality after school programs. SCAN is great, but SCAN sometimes, depending on where you go, is not a quality program. We need to bring back our Boys and Girls Club and making sure that we have after school help, making sure that my pre-K 3 is going to school and our school attendance is off the chain because they don't have no more after school programs for pre-K 3. So when we look at all of our structures for our kids, we need to look at it from the time to go leave their family child care provider, which is pre-K 3. They start to go to our schools. The mom have to work up until 5 o'clock, but sometimes they don't have after school. So we need to create an after-school program for our pre-K threes, making sure our high schools have the tools that they need, making sure we have robotics, make sure we have trades, make sure we have financial literacy, make sure we have civics, make sure we have everything that that young person may want to do and thrive in our community and have access to it. That's what's missing, right? As discretionary funding, as the state assembly member, we get discretionary funding. And my discretionary funding is going to youth programs that will create entrepreneurs, that will create programs so youth have something to do. When you keep our youth busy, amazing things happen. We have future doctors, we have future lawyers, we have future city council members, we have future state assembly members. We don't know that because we don't have no programs that will actually uplift them and love on them. So my job as a state committee member that I've been doing already now is love on each individual kid, because I'm going to get old and I need them to be able to thrive in this community. But we need to thrive safely, and we can get rid of all these drugs and this open air drug use first so they can be able to thrive. That's it.
Awesome. Xavier.
Yeah, thank you. It's providing a safe environment. I think as a father of two boys, 7 and 10, and as I talked about in opening remarks, and watching, someone pass out from using fentanyl, rite of passage here in East Harlem was going to the corner store, the bodega, to go get something for your mom and dad, a bag of chips. And they don't have that safe environment where they can do that now. And it's even not safe for the even adults. I think for our youth, they've been traumatized by COVID, and that's been proven psychologically. They were separated during the most pinnacle part of their years and development to build those social bonds. So helping them first so that they can be productive, thriving members of society, because they so deeply want to do that. And speaking to a lot of the youth, they want that, but we still have to help them along. And that's by passing legislation that will bring programs for mental health and well-being, helping them understand how they can better resolve conflict, which I've been working with Not Another Child when it comes to socio-emotional learning. On the earlier side, the more preventative side, when we talk about pre-K3, if we need to pass legislation where programs for those that are disadvantaged, whether they're growing up in NYS like my dad or my best friend did, can actually be into programs like a daycare at 6 months of age, when the neurons are all developing. And so that the parents also have the resources on the opposite side. So when they have to work late, because they're providing, maybe working 2-3 jobs, we can provide that through legislation. Yes, it may incur some taxes, but it's worth, if you benefited from the society, then giving back to that so those less advantaged can actually benefit and thrive. That's an investment of human capital unlike we have seen ever. So that's what I would advocate for, is passing legislation that would invest in these programs on both ends, as well as mental health bills that can actually create the next generation. So when we're old and gray and crotchety, that we're complaining about how bad the world is, they're looking at it and say, hey, we're going to do better now. And thank you for what you've done.
Thank you. And William.
Thank you. I think it's important that we applaud and work with the current nonprofits that are in East Harlem. Though I know that there are challenges and there are needs for enhancements, I don't think it's important that we tear down organizations like SCAN. And I say that because I'm an alum of SCAN of the Boys and Girls Harbor when it was on 104th Street and 5th Avenue. I did the Upward Bound program when I was in high school. And I've greatly benefited from the guidance from that program. We need to expand on that type of model of the Upward Bound program. These are programs that provided you with career counseling, personal counseling, access to health services, as well as providing you with some type of a minimal stipend to provide an incentive to our youth to participate in this programming. We need to expand on these programs and also think about how we can expand those stipends so that way we can incentivize our youth to invest in themselves while also having an experience that's tangible and transferable to them. We need youth services that are interesting. We need to think about how we can harness more arts and performing arts. I think we have a lot of our youth that are very entrepreneurial in their mindsets. We need to find ways to teach them how to be better how to be salesmen, how do you build a business, how do you manage your business once you get to that position. We need to provide the tools for our youth so that way they are on a pathway to success. Yes, we need to invest in legislation, invest through the budget and legislation in services from the beginning when they're in infancy. But it is a long process getting to graduating high school. And we need to think about the variables that are going on in East Harlem and how we structure programs and provide complementary resources to those programs so that way we can have the best delivery for our youth and have the best results. We need an impact results approach with our youth. And also we need to work with them. We need to hear their input. I'm 37 years old. It's been a bit of a while since I could say I was a youth. We need to make sure that the youth are sitting at the table, that they're at these conversations, that they're shaping this advocacy, and they're telling us what do they want to see the priorities be, and we be the champions and to get it over the finish line in collaboration with them. Coalition.
Great, thank you. So I have a little bit of a two-parter for the next question, and this is in response to a comment that was made. All of you technically are volunteer elected officials. And so this is a two-part. If you could take a moment to talk about the specific role you hold. So if you can let people know the title, how long you've been in it, and what exactly it tasks you with doing. And then the second part is in that role, what have you done to help the seniors in the 68th Assembly District? So I'm going to start with Tamika, mainly because your titles are on your slide in the background. And I will go Tamika to William and then to Xavier. What is your current title that you hold? What does that entail? And how are you using it as a platform to help seniors in our community?
All right, so district leader, I just got elected to that position. State committee member. Okay, district leader is civic engagement, making sure that we turn out people to vote, making sure that our community is well educated in the picking our judges and making sure they participate in the political process. As the state committee person, my job is to pick the governors and hold our state elected officials accountable. How I've been utilizing both of those positions is when helping the seniors is protecting their housing. As we know, right, oversaturation is a problem, but so is our housing. Right now, our NYCHA developments is under attack. They're trying to privatize our NYCHA developments by trying to give our seniors who desperately need decent housings with quick fixer-uppers. For everybody who don't know, I'm against the RAD Pact, the Preservation Trust, because the only way we can keep our affordable housing is keeping it in the Section 9 program. When we move away from Section 9 to Section 8, it goes by the income. If your income changed $1, you could be out of that program, and then you have no safety net. And the other thing is making sure that our seniors who have the expiration of the 421A, I've been working with them way before it expired. We went to the community board and tried to have the community board to help us uplift this voice. But, it got a bad rep because they said 421A tax abatement was kind of like developer heavy. But you have to look at it, right? The developer, they got a pass, but so did our shareholders. Our shareholders that's aging now has a high maintenance attached to that because of their maintenance fee is going up, right? Somebody was paying $500 a month for their maintenance, and now taxes are due. It's $1,200. So now the city kind of like left us hanging, and I can continue it on social media.
Xavier?
I thought you said Will was going next.
Excuse me? William? Thank you.
I'm next.
Seems so.
All right. Thank you. I've been a member of the Democratic Party since 2013 for the 13th election district, which is Lakeview. I've been an elected district leader since 2021. And in that capacity, I've had an extensive focus on judicial civic education. I've hosted multiple Zooms and in-person workshops to educate our seniors and other community members about how judges have to navigate the Democratic Party process to secure the endorsement of the party. I've also heavily focused on appointing community members to be poll workers, and as an appointed poll worker by a district leader, it ensures that you remain at your poll site. So it's a very important component of our electoral process. I've also ensured that I incorporated more of our senior issues in terms of the questioning process when judicial candidates request the endorsement of district leaders. A lot of people do not know that district leaders are responsible for voting for the endorsement of judicial candidates for countywide civil court or municipal court district. So that's a very important process in terms of our judicial process. I have also appointed several seniors to be members of the county committee in Executive Part D, and also helped get other members in other parts of the 68th to be members of the Democratic Party.
Xavier?
Yes, thank you. So I've served this community for over 15 years through community board service. I've been at senior leadership for 6, including vice chair and chair. I've served as chair of multiple committees that oversaw resolutions that were passed, including rent moratoriums and housing moratoriums to help keep our seniors in place. Some of those I think were even during your tenure, Nye. And including also on the small landlord side to help our small business owners, so because they're all intertwined, to make sure that we're taking care of them and bringing balance. We have a growing senior population. It's important to preserve that. That is our knowledge that will be passed on to our children and children's children. But when it comes to the role of as a leader, the chair serves in a body of 50 members that are appointed by the borough president and the council member. They elect a leader, and that individual sits on Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, for example, borough board, district service cabinet, dealing with all the city agency heads from the borough heads, sometimes even citywide, and depending on the administration. And we're able to actually influence and give input to change certain things depending on how that administration views boards. The previous administration, de Blasio, he had a disdain for community boards, so he tried to stop that engagement. Bloomberg, on the other hand, empowered community boards, and he would tell you how he saw it, left, right, or center, whether he agreed with you or not, but they would at least work with you where they could. So that's the important thing about my service, and what I will continue to do in Albany is to elevate that and continue building a coalition and working relationships with everyone here, our hosts, our district leaders, our state committee women, state committee men, our state senators, everyone. That's what it's about. Also, I serve on county committee, which many of you know, you have all your election districts and you have county committee members. So when there's a special election called, they can select the nominee for a vacated seat, as well as other purposes. But so with that, I appreciate everyone's time here, and I'll continue leaning in and working with everyone as leaders for this community.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers. And that's a great tee up for our closeout. We're going to ask that everybody go around round robin, 1 minute, tell us what your closing remarks are for the evening, or any salient takeaway that you'd like this audience to consider as they cast their poll vote this evening. And we'll go Tamika, Xavier, William.
So hi guys, thank you so much for listening to my views. I've been answering some of the questions in the Q&A session as well. I hope that my consistency earned your poll votes today for this. Regardless of how the vote goes, I'm still going to be on the ground, making sure that we have the resources that we need. I'm consistent. This is my 3rd race. And like I've been telling everybody, I'm going to keep on running until I become the next state assembly member. I'm not going anywhere. Politics to me is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not who got the most money. It's not who got the most resources. It's who's actually on the ground connecting with voters and making sure that each voter's voice is being heard. Who's empowering the community to step up and to utilize their voice. Who is approachable when they're on the streets? Who do you see constantly on the streets when you walk the streets? If you don't see any elected official, then they shouldn't have your vote at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Tamika. Xavier, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We appreciate the effort it takes to put this on. When it talks about tenable results, it takes a team. No one individual can do it. I'm going to tell you straight up, anyone here says they're going to do it by themselves. That's not the facts. Sendero Verde here came to us with 4 economic bands. We got approximately 11, and that was through collaboration and consensus building, and I was proud to be part of that. When Costco came and we piloted out the first EBT and SNAP program, working with Councilmember Goya and Congressman Rangel to make sure that those 3 locations would accept EBT and SNAP, communities which were lower socioeconomics. Now it's a nationwide program. It takes collaboration. It takes consensus. We're going to need to make this community safer. We're going to need to activate legislation, including the work I've been doing already with DA Bragg's office to make changes to discovery reform so we can actually take care of the issues impacting our community. I will continue to fight for those public safety initiatives. I will continue to fight with the affordability crisis to make sure that people are not displaced. They can put food on the table so that parents are not squirreling away food to make it last the month, which is actually happening in this community. That is what I will fight for. And the last thing will be healthcare, that we have to make sure we have parity of our reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid so that we have the same resources, we have the same results provided for this community as all the others in New York City. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier and William.
Thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you and have this substantive dialogue about how we can advance the 68th Assembly District and address oversaturation and to ensure that we have a more equitable distribution of our substance abuse and treatment clinics across New York City. But it's aside from us having a productive dialogue, we need to have a productive action plan. And we need an assembly member that has a focus on advancing change and effectuating change. I've mentioned that before. That is a key component for the next assembly member to focus on advancing the interests of East Harlem. We need to have it be an inclusive and coalition-based approach, but we want to ensure that our community has a better understanding of how an assembly member and how their vote can impact the greater good. It's time for us to roll up our sleeves and work together and have a focus on collaboration and getting everyone on the same page in terms of their understanding how to navigate government to address the issues that we have in our community. We need leaders. We need leaders, but we need a leader as the next assembly member who has tangible, transferable experience and one that is not focused on being a parachuting into the community in the last couple of years, but you elect an assembly member that has an experience and time advancing the interests of East Harlem and the broader community. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. And before we close out, always like to share some words of wisdom. My first, that many of you have heard me say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and East Harlem has been on the menu for way too long. So it's time for all of us to step up, to have a seat at the table by voting. And in the words of my dear friend, Lin-Manuel Miranda, your vote is your own to use as you choose. Read up on the candidates with a fraction of the time that you spend on Twitter or complaining about the state of your neighborhood or our country, and pick the candidate who aligns with your values and the issues that matter to you most. I thank you all for being here, and I'm going to kick it out to Sadira to close us out this evening. Thank you to all candidates.
Thank you, Nye. Now, before we wrap up tonight, I'd like to introduce a quick poll, which I spoke to you about earlier. So this poll is just for informational purposes, and it's going to help us to understand the community's perspective. So please take a moment and fill out the poll and let us know who you're likely to vote for at this moment in time for the June election. So we're going to share these results with you tomorrow, so keep an eye on your inbox. So please take the time to do that now. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to learn more about the Greater Harlem Coalition or join us in our mission to make Harlem a thriving community, please visit our website at greaterharlem.nyc or email us at info@greaterharlem.nyc. And we'd like to extend our thanks to the Mount Morris Park Community Improvement Association for co-sponsoring tonight's event. And we'd like to thank our candidates, our moderators, and a special thanks to our GHC volunteers for coordinating this fantastic forum. So we hope you all enjoyed the forum and gained valuable insights into our community's future leaders. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful night.